Roles of a denizen. A content creator is a user that creates posts and is rewarded based on the quality of their content. A content evaluator is a user that helps assess the quality of content and enforces community standards. The evaluator is effectively taking part in a marketplace to curate content and is rewarded for early evaluation. A content consumer is a user that wishes to find and consume the most valuable content in a given subject area or within a community. A lair owner is a person holding tokenized ownership of all or part of a community lair. Owners are rewarded with a portion of all mining activity happening within their lair. Owners are incentivized to build the best community of content creators and evaluators.
Hello, this is the DENDAO call for July 20th, 2023. There is a link to join this call if you want to talk to us about things and stuff. That is in the DENDAO layer on Den.Social. There's a link. I'll bring it up real quick. There's a post that looks like this, titled DENDAO call for the 20th, and there's a link for StreamYard in there. And there's also a reply section if you just want to drop a line. So if you don't have that in already, get it in there, or you can chime in and chat. I'm Dave. We've got Joe and I am for I am with us. And the agenda today is for the July LCP, which has ended. And I think DeFi was the winner. And then we'll do the reply section for community feedback and have it open for comments at that point. Let's just jump right into it. So the LCP ended for July, and we have the same winner for both categories. So when tallied by lore, DeFi got 6.2 million votes versus the next runner-up for that category is 2.1. Wow. So order of magnitude.
Last minute pumped that one big.
Did it jump at the end? Because I ended up with significantly less than I think that I had in there.
Yeah, somebody scooped. Somebody had some lore that they had been hoarding that they dumped in, I guess. It wasn't me. I got 8% though. That's pretty high.
Oh wow! I think I'm maybe under 2%. So.
I threw some in at the last minute too because I was I try to stay definitely under 10%, but I think I had like a 0.5% or something, and I was like, DeFi I kind of like a lot. So
yeah, boy, a few years back I was all over DeFi. Loved it.
Yeah, and it's only getting more relevant as you see things like delistings of things from centralized exchanges, and even stuff that's not under scrutiny in the U.S. from a legal perspective. You're seeing stuff like Monero, XMR being delisted just because it works, I guess, as advertised, is my opinion. Yeah. So you're seeing DeFi being more important. Specifically, I think the next phase of DeFi is going to be this cross-chain decentralized swaps. I've seen at least one functional active DEX that's between BTC, XMR, and ETH doing atomic swaps as a DEX interface for atomic swaps, which is pretty cool. And then there's stuff like Thor Chain and Chainflip. I'm pretty hardcore bullish on the success of Chainflip and its necessity, because it's going to be able to bring in a lot of hopefully, I guess what I see is it being more emulating the centralized exchange experience for people that want to do a lot of trades for cheap without having a lot of slippage and stuff. And I think that's the next thing that DeFi really tackles is stuff like that. Right. Uniswap apparently has a V4 coming out. They're already testing. I feel like we just barely got settled into V3, and I'm just like, dude, I don't know. So,
Yeah, I don't know
So
if I will care, since they're controlling. It might as well be a centralized exchange for all intents and purposes, if they're going to control what
yeah,
we see.
the underlying the front end, it definitely has a block list. I went and looked it up. I was talking to Greg. I looked it up from Rivet, and I looked it up, and they on GitHub, and it points right to it. Like, yep, here's what we use, and here's what you can use for a block list for tokens. So that's just their front end. You can still swap it on a different. If you have your own front end and your own interface, it's just Ethereum at the end of the day. So the thing is, you got to bring your own infrastructure.
Yes, but you're not going to get the traffic. That's the problem.
No.
No, it's
the
like
barrier.
Business idea, but it's location.
It's already a barrier to try to get someone to learn how to use Uniswap, much less say, oh, use this other thing that is, also accesses the underlying liquidity pools that, wait, what?
That's why I do think, imagine, if you had the behavior pool set, let's say it's not even Den, some random network, the random token, and it put a behavior protocol behind there, so you'd have to go to the Oracle, state your intention. I want to buy this or sell this, and I can see how much is there, and it would be able to do a curve based upon liquidity, supply, whatever, and most importantly, your network reputation, or what you are doing to prove value to that token's network. I think everybody would go to that system for that network.
I think so too.
I think that both of them existing,
Yes.
a completely blind one and also a behavior-based one, both existing at the same time, would just create arbitration opportunity for people that did want to be like good. Imagine if we did that on Den, or if we did that on. Imagine if a competitor to Binance did that, and they had their own social network built into their exchange, or they had their own not even social, but just trading, account behaviors and things like that, where somebody could have a good reputation on a behavior-based platform where they get a better price to sell because they haven't been manipulating, they haven't been wash trading, they haven't been doing stuff that people don't like. And then they can go out to one market that's blind and bring it over to the other market that's not blind and operate within the good behavior parameters and get a better price. I don't see any reason not to do that stuff, except for getting enough people to build it together,
right?
That kind of thing, which is part of the segue into the reply section anyway. So I'll save it for that. So DeFi proposed by Derox. Thank you. Whoever voted for that will get lot whenever those are minted next week. If you want to see social influencers, vegans, animals, fair contests, or 3D printing, then you can still pay a matter-based fee to get those created, and they get created the same way as if they won in the normal way. There's no difference except for the matter fee. Anybody can pay that fee, contact support if you want to do it. And real quick, that would be starting at the most, at the first loser would be 200 matter, 400, 600, 800, 1,000 matter as the fee. And then all the way down from there, anything all the way down to building, construction, and trades. Anything with eight or more unique users can be created in the same way for 2,500 matter. So if you want to spend some of that matter you've been hoarding, then go for it. And I guess the last reminder on that is any kind of custom layer you want to make, you can buy it for, I think right now the standard pricing is, it can be outside of an LCP, it can be private, not public, it can be whatever you want. You can even bring your own token. The base pricing for that, I think right now is 0.66 ETH worth of matter. All right, cool.
All right.
So that's July SLP. Congrats to Derox and to the DeFi layer. Now let's slip down to Derox's comment, who says that they would like to find out how Den.Social is built, The transactions are on Dragon Chain. What is the UI built on? Great question. There was a question also in Den support that I replied a little bit to. Joe, do you want to take this? Otherwise, I can give an overview.
Sure.
Big picture.
I mean, the backend's obviously on Dragon Chain. It also uses a tech stack of Golang. It was originally written in Python, I do believe, and so I don't know if any of that still exists. There might still be some remnants of that, but either way, Golang. Some of the backend data store management is PostgreSQL, the best relational database, and open source, of course. And trying to think what else there might be. It is, of course, hosted inside of or using Docker containers. Right now, it's running in a cluster, and the guys, I mean, we're working on a couple of different things to change some of that up. And in fact, I want to talk to both of you guys at some point about Flux or alternatives, and if the pricing that I'm looking at is really there, and how some of the the data versus the services would be hosted. Would they have to be hosted in the same cluster? Stuff like that. So there's a bunch of stuff there. For the front end, it is, and we're talking about the main interface. It is mainly React, and I'm no major crazy fan of the React framework, but I'm also not crazy about any web UI framework these days. I prefer, like, say, Flutter, and the mobile app was written in Flutter, and hopefully we'll pick that back up again someday. I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I would like to just point out that one of the important parts is that it's very modular, and so you have you have the transactions going out over Dragon Chain, which is where you have the security of the transactions going to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the back end is separate from the front end, meaning you can develop your own website, your own app, whatever, to interface with the back end, right? So you could actually have 3 or 4 different Den websites depending on what flavor you want. If you want to design your own, you could. And right now we don't have that to where anybody can come in and do it without asking. But if you have a team that wants to develop a better version of Den, or a different version of Den, or a more customized version of Den, you can use Den's blockchain and Den's backend and all the infrastructure by just plugging into it with your own front end or your own UI.
Yeah.
So that's more of a, if you're a dev or if you're a team of devs, you can do that. But
something else that's interesting, like say, and this is a Dragon Chain thing, but it very much is the way that Den is built. And we've had some other customers that, when I'm working with their dev teams, it's really interesting because it's maybe a little bit atypical of an architecture that essentially it's modular, but it's even a very, I guess what you might call an asynchronous setup that essentially, if you think about it on the one side, we want to track the things, what's the, the person's voting, the person's replying, whatever. And that does not have to be tightly coupled with the measures of that, or because you think about it with Den, and it would be notably complex and brittle if we would have built it in a normal architecture. But given the fact that that's all on chain, and you could consider it the same as you could do this without a chain as well. But the fact that it's in on chain and portions of it are fleshed out in the data store in a way that's more appropriate or simple for the UI to hit, that the reputation system uses that data, the mining system uses that data, the the referral system that's asked about by Dayrox also, it uses that data independently. So you could have, if we wanted, we could construct an entirely separate token that could reward users for certain activities on the system, without changing the current mining at all. I mean, it's kind of a, if you look at it that way, it's much more interesting because you can do so many different things. So anyway.
Yeah, if we wanted to, we could have like, let's say in a year we were going to throw Den Music Festival or Den Big Party,
Right.
and we wanted to introduce a new token called Good Behavior Token or something, like somebody who had, if we use the reputation scores in the layers or the site wide or maybe some of the other ones that are related to like some of the early leaderboard stuff that we played with for a little bit, you could actually get reward with that token. And then when you showed up, that's how you get into VIP. You have to pay with that token.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Either you have to have earned it, or you can find somebody who has it and offer them some matter for it, or carpool and pay for gas to get some, whatever, to go to the party.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah. The second one, so Durox mentioned that, maybe we could have a little video on that or something. That'd be interesting to do, because there are a lot of moving parts, like when you deposit and withdraw matter and lore. There's an interop smart contract that lives on Ethereum natively. Whenever you're mining on Den, the mining actually is minted on Ethereum. Whenever this July LCP wraps up, every month you'll see, I think it's like 3 contracts on Ethereum. One of them is the lot contract. There's actually 2 lot contracts, I think, that work with each other. And then you'll see those, being minted on Ethereum. So there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of places where the cogs and levers sort of all link together. Maybe if anybody's really good with infographics, that could be a fun one to make, because there's a lot of connection points on that.
Yep.
The next question, Joe, you answered this already a little bit this morning on Super Happy, but affiliate links, right now, basically we have the share button. And you pointed out already that if I hit share, it says link copied. If I then, let's just paste that into the address bar up here at the top of my screen. It's kind of small, isn't it? Can I do this? No, that doesn't do anything. Anyway, it gives me Den.Social / Den yada, yada, yada. And at the end of it, there is this part, which is different depending on who you are. If you're logged in and you click the share button, you get this unique referral ID that's just smushed onto the end of the link. And whenever anybody clicks on that, the system, Den's system, knows that it came from you. So you could put this on a QR code and slap it on the inside of a bathroom stall if you want, and anybody who scans it while they're taking a poop can give you a referral to go to DENDAO. I'm not recommending that you put graffiti on stuff. I'm just saying that it would technically work. So that's basically what the referral system is, and there is a portion of mining that goes out to that every day. The other place that works is if you boost a post, if you see something that is externally boosted. When you share that externally boosted, has a little rocket ship next to it, that post, then not only do you get the referral, but you get a portion of, when a person boosts it, they have to put matter in a bucket and say, here's what I'm using to boost it. So if you see boost, you share those around externally too. I did that initially when there was a lot, like when there was any activity in the Gainesville layer. I was experimenting with Den a little bit a while back, and we did a lot of that. We did a lot of using it for street teams, using it for how we used to run like local promo for a band that was doing a show, that kind of thing. We would put the QR code on the show poster, actually, and that's exactly what I would do. Is I would boost a post. The post would be the equivalent of like a Facebook events page or a Eventbrite event page. It would have all the info, a link to buy tickets, details, when the show starts, all that stuff. And then that link, I'd put a URL, my personal reference, my share link. I would make that to a QR code and put it on the poster, and then I could see how many people hit it on the boosted post.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
And,
or I would tell people, hey, if you share it, you get, the cut, that kind of thing.
In the white paper, the standard pool is called the engagement reward. So it's utility reward pools, engagement reward, and it is 2.5%. I couldn't remember. I think we made it 2.5 instead of 5 because we were worried about, bot activity, that, it might be, this is not necessarily something that's super well protected. And You know, it does do some I guess what would you say, the reasonable expected protections against you know, just having something a script come in and try to win that out. So
Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think in that specific case it doesn't.
Yeah.
So we should look into that.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of places where that is a built-in system, but that's one of the places we need to work on. It's not a super important. It's 2.5%, but right now it's one of those low-hanging fruits.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something like, oh, prove this and prove that. That could be a point where we improve.
Can you real quick walk me through that? So I post that link, let's say on a Twitter post. Someone hits it from Twitter and comes back to Den. It recognizes that, and then it would reward 2.5% to everyone who did that on a daily basis of the 1,000 that are mined.
Yeah, that 2.5% is the size of the whole bucket of availability that day, that period. So everybody who shares stuff in that period gets a proportion of that 2.5%. So 2.5% of 1,000, which is what,
25 matter.
Yeah, 25 matter.
Yeah.
You get a cut of that depending on how much you do it.
And it does do, like I said, it does do self-limiting. Like if somebody comes 100 times from the same place, then it counts once, right? But yeah, and that's why when you're doing it with a boost side, it's pretty interesting because effectively, if you boost a post and you're hoping that other people share it for external, boost external, that when you post it yourself, if anybody clicks on it, you're at least going to get part of your matter back, right? And if nobody else clicks on it at all, then you're going to get all of it back minus whatever that fee was. So, you know, it's kind of a safe way to do that.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Next comment. So continuing with decentralizing Den, we talked about offshoring. Last week, we pretty much, I don't know if there was any decision made. I don't think there's ever been a decision made.
No.
But now we're sort of leaning to decentralization as opposed to trying to do a traditional offshoring with a traditional entity.
Request. Can you hit refresh? And could we hit my next question before we hit this one?
Yeah. Can do. Got a can-do attitude over here. Let's see here. What'd you find out about upvote brigading? Shit, I didn't. Honestly, I forgot.
Derox.
I forgot.
I wanted to know for Derox, and for me, I'm curious too.
No, that's a really good question, and I simply literally forgot until just
Is this
now.
the question about someone?
There were specific examples of people getting a butt ton of energy.
30,000 energy.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to look at that.
I dropped the ball on that.
Content. Yeah,
I dropped the ball on that completely. I'm embarrassed to say I forgot. I'm sorry.
The good thing is this is frankly, a real world test of what we think should be working, which is if they are legitimate votes by just people who are otherwise not only working to brigade this content, then it should stand. But if they are essentially a bunch of people coming in and potentially controlled by one person, then that should be heavily attenuated, the value, because the high end, and that's the other side of it too. You can't tell anything from the post interface showing you that it has 30,000 energy. It could be a lot of it could be negative. It could be very little consensus, so like 51% positive, and therefore it's doesn't really record much.
Right.
So yeah, depending on the consensus, how much consensus, depending on a number of there's a couple of reputation-based things too.
Yeah.
There's a couple of anti-spam and anti-bot features that attenuate how much of that energy is effectively applied, depending on your behavior, which is why I need to look into it and see what actually is going on. Cool. Thank you actually a lot. I would not have remembered if you hadn't said that, and then I would have felt double bad next week, been like,
It's funny because I remembered it over the weekend, and I remembered
Yeah.
it again like on Monday, and then when we went to video just before the to start the meeting is when I remembered. I go, oh, I got to put
Oh,
that in
yeah.
for the
Yeah.
meeting. So
Yep.
that's why I had when you'd refresh. That's when it showed up. So.
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
So with some of the stuff that, over the weekend and early this week, related to the question of decentralization of DEN, taking some of the moving parts that Joe described earlier in this meeting and pushing them out onto different experimental infrastructure. Because one of the takeaways I think last week was that we should do the interesting stuff and the experimental stuff.
Right.
Because that's what's interesting and that's what's exciting and that's what ultimately we want to be shooting for. We want decentralization, although there are a lot of parts that are decentralized on DIN. There are some parts that are, it's a hybrid system. You have both things going on. And one of the questions that I think Joe already mentioned a minute ago was, how do you do certain things? How do they connect together? If, for example, it's running on something like Flux, can we ensure, for example, that the hybrid parts that need to be at least held non-public, even if we decentralize some of the more centralized parts, can we safely make the private parts private still? So we don't, for example, dox everyone's email address, as an easy example.
Yeah.
That's one of the questions that was raised by another project called Kudos that I forget what what do you call a collection of blockchains? A ecosystem. I forget what ecosystem they're in, but Kudos is like Flux. Flux being a hosting solution for decentralized compute hosting. Kudos is also that. And this is where we have to have a conversation about assuming that the last part of your question is solved, raising capital to accomplish this. Assuming that, resources being people and whether it be tokens to host or money to put into that somehow, whatever capital needs to be. Assuming that's solved, then we have to discuss things like Flux versus Kudos as two examples. Flux being anybody on any hardware can run a node. They have like 3 different levels, and depending on how powerful it is and how much bandwidth it is, you can run different levels. But anybody can do it on any hardware. Whereas with Kudos, you almost have to be a data center partner, and you are required to use things like hardware encryption for virtual environments. So you have to have a CPU like AMD's EPYC or Intel's Xeon processors that have hardware encrypted virtual environments, so that you can ensure to customers that absolutely there is separation, not just on a software layer, but in the silicon on the CPU, that you've got hardware encrypted virtual environments to run these virtual machines that you're hosting. So it's less decentralized, but it's more technically secure. And so those are the kinds of questions. They're, engineering questions. They're logical, like what do we need to accomplish questions, but those are the important questions. Also, Flux is way more mature, and Kudos is, I think, still ramping up.
It looks pretty impressive. And it's just when I went in there and I went to their calculator, and it it asked something about a month, right? And so I put in I think we're running a 4 cores on the main system. I think I put in the amount of RAM. It wasn't, or sorry, not the RAM, the amount of storage. It wasn't outstanding. It was like, it was less than I thought it was. And then I put in a RAM and tried to be kind of conservative, make it a little bigger than normal. And it came up and it said $3. And I'm like, is that daily? Is that hourly?
So I'll have to go and look at that. I haven't looked at that calculator you're talking about because not too long ago it was free.
I see. So it might very well be. It might
Not
be
too long
just
ago, they were literally giving away infrastructure to anybody who would build. Please come and build, because you had people that were already running nodes and they didn't have a lot of customers on them. So they were like, "Come on, use our stuff. Prove that it's doable." They were building. This is why they did their own Minecraft server on it. This is why they're now doing. So they have a really interesting advertising push coming out, and a demo coming up called Proof POUW, proof of useful work, where they're still doing a proof of work.
I love it. Yeah.
But what they're incorporating is things like folding at home, protein folding, to solve problems. Could be SETI at home, could be whatever. So they're using these systems as their mining algorithm, because they have their service node stack, but they also have a proof of work mining for their coin security. They're two different things. So anyway, they're an interesting. They are out of UK, I think. Look up Zelcore. They have an excellent wallet. It's it covers like every freaking thing. You can have everything in one wallet. The Zelcore is closed source though, so there's depending on your priorities there. It's not all open source stuff.
Yeah.
So these are all questions to have a dedicated
know
about.
Right? I mean, it's
yeah. It's cool. It's good stuff. It's at least exactly the kind of thing that I think the world needs and that we should push towards. And as far as the storage thing goes, I know that their hosts have SSDs. They have solid state drives. We could get away with using less storage if it's expensive, and use something like storage and bolt it on as a separate storage thing. But then you're bringing in more latency over the network and stuff.
Yeah, and that's,
you do that.
The other question, I mean, is it something, do you deploy as a cluster, so self-contained, or do you deploy, like say your data environment and your chain and your UI? Or
you deploy it in a Docker container. And
so we can
what container?
Docker. So Docker is used to, instead of what would normally, like, I guess traditionally, I still do it this way, using a virtual machine where you emulate like all the hardware and you run it in a VM. Docker container can accomplish the same thing, except it's like a lot more lightweight. You don't have to run a bunch of VMs. You can run it all on the same VM, and it just brings in all of any kind of like custom settings you have for the operating system and the operating environment. You can just emulate it or bring it inside of this Docker container. And so basically everything runs in those these days from what I've seen. I don't use them. I don't know Docker really well. I'm, I guess, old school. I like my VMs, my virtual machines. But yeah, I know we use it. I say we. Dragon Chain uses it extensively. I know I use it for the Dragon Chain nodes that I run at home. I have L2, L3, L4 nodes. They're all just Docker containers. In fact, they're all in one Docker container, the way I have them. So yeah, anything that can run in a Docker container supposedly can run on Flux. That's their advertising.
That's so okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So it might be a real. I mean, we need to figure out if that pricing is legit, but it might be a real solution to what we've been talking about in terms of imagine if we could get it running in that way. That would be pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah, what I want to happen with Den, with any system that's like any decentralized system, should just exist. It should be something that both operationally, technically, functionally exists as almost as if it's part of nature. It's part of the environment that just exists. And so the closer we can get to making it just part of the weather, is the closer to success. That's my personal measure.
I agree.
So the last part of this question, I think, is the answer. Where do we start looking? We can talk about how to technically accomplish it, but even if all that's done, there's going to have to be the DENDAO or maybe a community DAO or however it happens. would have to raise capital, because Flux is decentralized. That doesn't mean it's free. It could be open. It could be free as in speech, but not free as in beer. That kind of thing.
Right. Well, and see, to raise the capital, you got to have the target of how much you need, and and there's 3 layers of cost here. There's the design work to get it done, the actually testing some of those functions, and then finally, of kind of more of a final live beta. I don't know, running in parallel mirror to DIN. To make sure that is working. And then there's, of course, then the maintenance costs, the maintaining costs on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, or whatever. So we would need to do that design so that we could come up with some sort of ballpark pricing to then be able to go out and raise that capital for it.
That's an important point. Maybe I was wrong, and actually I think I was wrong. That's something that we can do now before we even talk about like raising capital. Like, how much are we talking about, and how much recurring?
Right. And then added to that is the cost of adding additional functionality, testing, implementation, those kinds of things.
Do you
as
think
we kind of move that direction, and that's, I guess, where I'm thinking and focusing on. I guess maybe I'm also a little bit. I've been described in my serial entrepreneurship as a quick start. Let's hurry up and get this thing going, and punch through the bureaucracy and this kind of thing. Even when I was an executive for a couple of pretty good sized companies, so it's always been, let's find the solution quickly and let's march. Let's move on. Let's go.
I wonder if
that's kind of what I'm thinking of DIN. I don't want to wait. To a certain degree, I want to wait to find out what happens with the SEC. But I don't want to wait that long either.
And there are solutions, by the way, especially if it's decentralized, even if that, we could be, DIN could be the platform for outside the U.S. Inside the U.S., you'd have to play as an anon and accept no earnings, right? It's crap like that. I don't know.
Right.
I wonder if it would be, if we rolled some features in that we've been talking about that everybody wants, but we haven't had the resources to implement them yet. If we rolled that into part of this plan, let's say we plan this all out and we say, okay, based on our technical understanding of how Flux works, how storage works, how these different things work that we decide we do or don't need. Here's the cost for that. Here's the cost for getting it deployed onto them and testing it and make sure it works. And then here's the cost of developing these additional features that we all know that we want. And then having that all wrapped up into a campaign where we can say, hey, here's our goal. We need this, and we need this monthly. And so I guess my question is, would it make sense to push for like a pro account or like a plus account to where you get extra features in exchange for a subscription? And then that way we could say we need this many subscriptions to sustain monthly, operational costs, where you get, you still get to, there's no restrictions if you have a free account, but there's, maybe there's some nice to have features and there's some quality of life features for the plus accounts or something like that. I'm just brainstorming here as a way to, once we have a number on what it would cost, and then once we have a way to illustrate what that would accomplish, further decentralization, sort of pioneering into uncharted territory with decentralized infrastructure, completely decentralized infrastructure, being able to advertise it's completely decentralized infrastructure, that nobody else has that, stuff like that, to attract people. And then also, hopefully, if it is something like Flux, I think that would be a big enough deal to say, hey guys, there's a whole social network on your infrastructure. Come join up, check it out. Let us know what you want. Marketing wise, getting them to come sign up. And
then, of course, when you're raising capital like that, then there's always the question of, okay, is is it, how am I going to get my money back? Is this going to be, an equity stake? Is this going to be some kind of royalty fee? Am I going to get a higher percentage of the daily mining? What am I going to do to get my investment back, my investment capital? Or are we talking about, like you said, maybe having, a pro feature or premium feature subscription model, whatever, and a non-subscription model, where we're looking at upstaging or upsizing somebody, a subscriber, upgrading a subscriber into a paid model or non-paid model. I don't know that, but it kind of scares me to talk like this because that's not what Den has been or has been in the future, in the past. And I don't want to destroy a good thing.
No, we're just speculating on how do you fund this stuff. What are
Right.
some different ways that you could do it? I don't
But
think
whoever funds it is going to want something in return.
this is where I think if I had to choose a preferred way to do that right now, I would literally try to get, a respected, like a freaking YouTuber, somebody that has a big channel, somebody that has a big following, and say, hey, if you want to be part of like the founding share of DENDAO, if you want, a substantial governance chunk of DENDAO, so that you can really make sure that you have a say in how it's done, so that we can build this out to how you need it. You're an experienced personality that produces content all the time. You have millions of people that consume your content. They will come to Den if you start using it as your platform. That would be a direction I would go in. Like I guess what I'm saying is what I would offer, just off the top of my head, was, hey, come in and own some of this. Kind of the same thing we offer anybody who wants to sign up for Den, but on a scale that's like,
yeah. Now you're talking about a double sale because one, okay, you're going to be asking them for a capital infusion, and then you're also asking them to start, pushing users this direction as well, away from the platform that is already a standard bearer and their cash cow. So I don't know about that being
it would have to be something that was that they thought that they could, if they look and they really understand how Den works. It would have to be something where they thought like, oh, I can use this tool set to make money, right? But I need this, and this, but I could make a lot of money with this if if we had these features. So I will go ahead and help fund these features that we need, and then I'll go use it. It would have to be somebody who was maybe technically inclined or really Web3 savvy that really understood the the value prop of the tools available.
Then there's another path. Thinking out loud a little bit, and it's always been in the back of my mind, but the idea of Den's got that niche, and it's different, that the world doesn't know about. So it's not just advertising money that needs to be spent, but it's taking advantage of what people need or are looking for. There's a need for, I want to post what I want to post. I want to say what I want to say without being censored. I want to post what I want to say. I want to say what all these things, and not be shadow banned. I want my words to be measured by their content and not by the platform that they're on. And I think that is where Den can take advantage of some of that. I don't know how we attract that openness, but part of it being decentralized is critical, where the community is going to measure in their content, right?
I think decentralizing it further would help that marketing, but you would still need a marketing budget. Like if we wanted to blow this thing up huge, you would need a marketing budget.
Right.
You would need, like Greg says, $20,000 a month for 6 months. That kind of thing.
Just that's like kind of a Kickstarter, to be honest with you. On the other side of it, there's Well, look at Rumble. Look what Rumble has done in a short amount of time, even
Hmm.
though that's a video platform. But that was a need that was being filled because of the censorship on YouTube, right?
Hmm.
And Library was, for whatever reason, um, was, and it got caught up in the SEC battle. And I think that allowed Rumble to step in. But people using Rumble are also very distrustful because it's centralized. They could find themselves in a few years in the same boat. And they've invested all this time and energy to build up a Rumble platform or subscriber base, and now they're in the same boat.
It's not.
Where
It's not just
Den
that.
being,
It's
where Den being decentralized,
yeah.
you know, people could say, okay, I can trust this. It's decentralized. I can go there and I don't have to worry about it, about a centralized.
Absolutely that. And I think that the biggest, like, that is a differentiator between, like, there's a lot of things that are different about what Rumble's doing. But importantly to me, is not necessarily that it's centralized, but more that they depend on that ad revenue, which has been, I think, getting like, a lot of people don't like their data being sold to advertisers for targeted advertising and things
Right.
like that, right? So
Right.
this traditional, this Web2 way of making money, where you bring in a bunch of users, your platform's free to use, and then you sell ads to advertisers that target certain demographics based on the data that you get from your users.
Right.
Um, that that model, I think, if we can advertise to the point of that, we don't use that model, we have a different model,
Mm-hmm.
which admittedly works way better at scale than it does on a small scale, because you need to have a robust community that advertisers do want to come in and advertise to. If I want to come sell shoes in the shoe layer,
Mm-hmm.
you need somebody to want to either buy matter to spend it on ads for, as in the form of boosted posts, and instead of targeting it like Facebook does, targeting it to specific demographics based on user data,
Right.
you have to then just know your audience and target it to the layer in general and make it a good enough post to where people want to read it and let them vote on whether it's a good ad or not. That they either have to do that, or sometime in the future, DENDAO has a way for them to pay cash to just
Right.
buy a boosted post, and maybe that just goes directly into, maybe by that time we have some sort of internal matter market where that
Right.
just buys it for them, like white gloves it kind of thing. That's I think as important, if not maybe more important, than the decentralization case, because, and both of them are really good if you can figure out how to explain that to people in short
Sure.
form marketing. But the fact that the revenue isn't based on, like, Den doesn't make money on your, like, we don't sell
Right.
ads like Facebook sells ads. You are not the product.
Right.
You know.
If you also think of, and now here's a more of a third path, shall we say, a little bit um, very different. But if you start thinking of matter as merch, then and that merch has got a scarcity.
Oh yeah.
People want it, and that can be also thinking of it in terms of merchandise, like hats, cups, mugs, T-shirts, or whatever. When you think of it in those terms, then matter can be your funding source by taking a small portion of that daily mining. If the DENDAO voted that way, so we could almost, of course, it takes people to get that they want it. They gotta want that to create the scarcity.
You could
But if you think of it
potentially
in merch,
have a way where people just use a debit card to purchase matter on the Den platform as well. There's still only a certain amount. It's not like you can, like, that doesn't violate scarcity at all, because Den would still have to use whatever its mind share of matter is to provide that. But it
Right.
could be a way. It could be definitely a way of doing that.
And the more, by the way, the more eyeballs you can get on it, the more value things like the boosts
Right.
would tie into that, so that I might have a commercial reason to get in front of this community, and so I'll buy some matter to put to get my content ranked up, and so
Yeah, you could apply that to like I don't know how that works with the legality of where Den is domiciled and stuff, but it is like you could separate it a little bit even by just turning that on just for boosts, where you can pay pay for a boost directly instead of buying matter. You're buying a boost, and then whatever can happen under the hood, but it isn't like someone gets a token for it or something.
Right.
And we were talking when we were talking about the premium accounts that you would have. I can't remember what all the features were, but one of them could be automatically boosting, right? That it automatically gets boosted because you're putting money in, and whenever you're posting content. And there were a couple of other things that that could tie in and make it valuable and worthwhile, as well as something. If you step back from comparing this to what would a Facebook or Twitter, it's $8 a month or whatever, more in terms of, look, this is a community of communities, and there is a DAO at hand, and there's behavior, and there's all the rest of this that effectively you could be capturing something that supports the ongoing operations. I mean, that's much like it would an open source project where you get credit, both visual and maybe a little more fundamental for this group's paying for 10% of all of our operations. So that type of thing, if we had some type of program like that, it would be super helpful. Because it's hard to tell. A lot of people want to offer ideas, but they don't have the funding, or they have the funding, but they never come because they don't quite know how we could use it, right? So, me, frankly, I think if I were a venture capitalist, right, and I'm a little more maybe maybe less risk averse than a lot of them. I mean, I purchased Bitcoin at $2 because I wanted to figure out how to use it and do things with it, right? And I damn well wish I would have, just put my life savings and rolled my 401k off and just bought all the right. But I wasn't making an investment. I was buying a software thing to use to try out. And yet, back then to now, I've seen several cases where successful, some cases that didn't because things happen, but the very things that are solving these problems in a more fundamental way. It's kind of like that 0 to 1 rather than, this is a slight fix on the advertising thing. Like, in my opinion, I love it, but like the Brave browser, right? I don't think it solves the issue with advertising. I think it maps it more efficiently, and it's probably better because it offers to the people, hey, do you want to earn money or do you want to see the ads? And I'm like, well, really, I think what Den has done, and if you're talking, the advertising world is a super valuable segment, that what we're doing, although on the other side we don't have enough eyeballs to get it, to get people to notice it, but what we're doing is, there is no advertising, it's content, and if the content sucks, whether it's advertising or not, it drops off, and that's the point, and that's what Twitter should be doing. That's what Facebook should be doing. They should invest in a system like this, or a well-established, or I guess an up-and-coming venture capitalist or wannabe venture capitalist. I think would be a smart thing to get into and to figure out how to push this out, because it's going to be worth a lot of money fundamentally as a technology.
Exactly.
But how in the world do we get from here to there? And I'm an engineer, so I can figure out solving the ways to make things work. What I can't figure out is how to talk to a venture capitalist that barely believes in Bitcoin, and barely believes that any of this is any different than something they saw 5 years ago, right? So, yeah.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you talk about it in the terms of like, okay, yes, we have advertising, And here's how you do that. Here's how it works on Den. To advertise on Den, your advertisement has to be a piece of content. You have to basically act like you're any other person, and you're writing about the thing you're trying to tell people about, right? And they have to give a shit about it. You have to make it in a way that it's not annoying, it's not spammy, it's not like attention grabbing in their face in a way that's distractive to where they're just going to say shut up and go away. You have to make it interesting and good. And if you're the thing that you're advertising, if you think it's interesting and good, which you should because it's your thing, then you need to figure out how to convey that, and then you post it and you boost it, and that's how advertising works. So maybe you don't talk about it in a way that it's like new or disruptive or decentralized to a VC or to an advertiser. You just say like, oh, this is how advertising works on Den. You make it a piece of content. And how do I target my demographic? Well, look at the different layers. Different communities have different topics, and maybe there's if you want to advertise Tesla, go to the cars layer, or maybe the Elon Musk layer, or something related. Maybe the space technology layer, something like that. Find your audience, know your audience, and then write to that audience with your content, and it will succeed.
Right. There's a lot of people out there though that go to Facebook or go to YouTube to make money. That's just why they're there. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to make money off with my business on Facebook or that kind of thing. And with the AI coming right around the corner, we're going to replace a lot of white collar jobs. There's going to be people that are going to be hungry for what can I do? What can I? I have a lot of input and ideas or things to say, but I can't make money off of it. And that is a scary thought in 2024. I was just listening to a podcast about that time frame of 2024. There's going to be a lot more displaced workers that are white collar jobs, and they're going to be hungry. What can I do to make money, or how can I pad my income, because now I have to flip burgers and that's not cutting it. And I think a niche here that's a wave that's coming, and we have an ability to be a post-earn platform.
And I think that is the other side of the coin that I was talking about. If you think of the balance of Den's economy as if you want to call them, let's put it in traditional terms, Web 2 terms, right? YouTube terms. You have the advertisers and you have the creators, the content creators, right? And the content creators get a cut of the advertising that YouTube gets to shove their ads into the creators' feed, right? It's abstracted and it's sort of like not as automatic and it's decentralized, but you have a similar thing happening there where if you assume, which is not the case right now, but if you assume you have a whole bunch of people advertising on Den through the boosted posts, and you have a whole bunch of people creating content on Den by creating content and earning Matter, that you have the advertisers putting money into a bucket called Matter when they buy their boost tokens. And then you have Matter going to the content creators, which they can then decide when they want to cash it out. Maybe it's more convenient to wait until market conditions are in their favor. Maybe they don't think it's going to go that way, so they do it now. Whatever's important to them. Maybe they want to hang on to some of them so they can boost their own content, or they can hand it out as rewards to their community to get more engagement for themselves, whatever. But really, they're still getting advertising money. It's just that the advertisers and the creators have a degree of separation. It isn't as direct, and the cut isn't like calculated by a central authority. It's calculated by an open market, whatever these tokens are worth or what they're worth. Sure. And so it's this balancing act that I think, Joe, you designed it, but I see it as something that is definitely designed to scale massively, and at a massive scale, it works beautifully. And the struggle is bootstrapping that, getting that cold start, lifted up to that point to where, okay, once the engine's running, it's like, here we go, it's smooth. But down when there's no gas in it, it doesn't run. That kind of thing.
And I will say, when we first designed some of this, or I should say when we first started to roll it out, I was less jaded than I am now, but I knew that there was some trickery that the major social networks went through. But now we know WhatsApp, Facebook for sure, Twitter for sure. They all did, Reddit for sure. They all did documented fraud, essentially, boosting their user accounts in order to get the funding in. Once they get the funding in, and that's the fraud, by the way, once they get the funding in, then they, over time they end up,
Right.
building out millions of users. But it's, that's something we haven't done at all. So
Right.
it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah. Functionally, maybe not morally or even legally, but functionally you could, for example, obtain a bunch of money and directly purchase the reward tokens from denizens, and every single day, week, or month, or whatever, keep filling in that bucket of like, yep, we'll buy them back from you, we'll buy them back from you, we'll buy them back.
Yeah.
So there's always this reliable, oh man, people can go cash in their tokens for Ether or for Monero or for Dogecoin or whatever they care about, US dollars, I guess.
Right.
And so you could do that. And if you do that, if you play that game long enough, you'll get more and more people being like, man, I can make money on Den. And eventually, theoretically, you could someday taper that off and, start faking it less and less and less and less until now you're not holding up the engine anymore and the engine's just running. So that's a way to do it. If you had a bunch of funding and you had, no hurdles of whether it be, legal or just morally getting in the way of your mission or whatever it might be. And I think that's how like mostly people do it though too.
Yeah.
I know we're approaching our hour here, but to speak to your point, Joe, there is value in integrity, and
Yes.
these other sites that you mentioned lack the integrity because of censorship, and Den has that integrity that can be a magnet to attract new users,
True.
and actually be kind of a legacy. And I'm not meaning like a legacy in old company, old way of doing things. I mean, making a legacy in a location of free dialogue, and also for people to earn and sound out their positions and refine those positions based on what the community says is good and bad and how it's measured. And that is not something that, and I can speak, I'm not going to go into it, but I was a Boy Scout amongst thieves sitting in a board of directors. And they were all a bunch of greedy SOBs. And I was the only Boy Scout in the group. And guess what? That actually gave me the power to kind of shift and chart the corporation to a different way. And then they split, but I was able to at least save about 54 jobs from that by being the Boy Scout, being the point of that particular position within the market, shall we say. So that's what Den has. That's what Den has, some integrity based on the community's vote, and didn't play those games of padding the numbers like you said, Joe.
Yeah.
So we can build off of that as a strength. I feel that. Otherwise it would be.
That's awesome. That's good to hear too, because it's all I always see is just everybody cheating, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to do. We're not going to do that. We used to have we never made it. We were going to make merch that and this was Dragon Chain prior to Den, but it was a monk in a frat house. That's what it felt like working at Dragon Chain during the all the crypto BS going on. There's like, nope, we're doing this. Here's why we're doing it, and you'd explain to the people, here's how it works, and yet people still go do that other stuff and end up getting screwed on FTX and stuff. So
I think an interesting place to start. We're gonna the three of us are gonna meet offline tomorrow, or just have another meeting,
right? Yeah,
a brainstorm meeting, and because I think this warrants a lot more discussion than we have time for right here. Sure. And so one of the things maybe we can start with tomorrow is just kind of what I am just brought up, the idea of, okay, Den started with nothing and we went through all of this and we got here. So the concept of like, all right, how do we start again from here and say, okay, here's everything we learned, and say, okay, we did all that. Here's everything we saw. Now we've got all that to start on as a foundation now to say, like, okay, now let's start from there. And where do we go? Where do we go from there as the next step? That's probably the the best way to start off for tomorrow, just to give us something to shoot for.
Yeah, because and I've said this before. We have limited resources. We need to find ways to build and or pay to build for these various things. So, anyway, that's a big part of it. Ugh.
That's good. Look forward to it.
Right on.
And as far as other companies wanting to build on a platform,
yes,
not confirmed, but it looks like banks are already starting to send stuff over RippleNet. So seeing like 1 cent transaction, FedNow test, that kind of thing. So
that's awesome.
It could be that there's enough people waiting on the sidelines to see what happens that we actually get players again.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of people. I will say the one thing that I have realized running this company is the shortage in the world of courage, and whether that's about saying what you need to say, or whether it's taking action, what you need to do. And there's a lot of opportunity if you have courage. Mm-hmm. There's risk, but there's a lot of opportunity if you have courage. So anyway,
absolutely.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks again. Remind me again if you don't see it in the next few days.
Okay.
DM me or reply to some message that you see me post and say, "Hey, where's that stuff that Dorox asked for?" Because I gotta look that up.
Good meeting, guys.
Thanks a bunch.
Yep. Thanks. Here's that song by Y'all Weird called "Enter the Dragon." I'll see y'all next week.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible. You see it now?